How are we doing, guys? It's JH the boxing fan here, back with another video. Hope you're keeping well. And in today's video I'll be reviewing last night's boxing action up in Liverpool, where of course Jonas successfully defended her IBF welterweight championship in a very tightly contested split decision victory against America's Michaela Mayer. I shall be coming on to that one with my reaction in just a few minutes. I think it's a fight that has divided opinion from what I'm hearing in the aftermath. A lot of people using the old R word, robbery word. So I'll be coming on to that one in just a few minutes. Just before I do, I want to touch firstly on the undercard. I know it was mainly all about the main event, wasn't it, last night? But it was good to see some prospects out in action so we could get a look at them. I was looking forward to seeing Ireland's Aaron McKenna out in action. He was supposed to fight Linus Udifa, the former British title challenger at super middleweight. Unfortunately, he pulled out late in the piece through injury. So McKenna ended up going in with Mickey Ellison, who'd come down from light heavyweight. And I thought he did a good job. He could only beat what's in front of him. Mickey Ellison was game early on, aggressive, sort of going at McKenna on the front foot. And I liked the way McKenna showed his maturity. Just sort of sat back, bode his time, got the read of Ellison, and then started to turn the screw halfway through that 8-rounder. He started to impose his jab and really started to bring the backhand in, and was landing the backhand with good effect. Ellison's race, I think, looked run after about the end of the 6th round. He appeared to have an injury to his hand. His corner were talking about pulling him out, and of course the towel then came in midway through the 7th, where McKenna sort of backed him up against the ropes and was looking to get his shots off. So another good performance from Aaron McKenna. I think he moves to 18-0, if I'm not mistaken. We know he's achieved great things as an amateur, and he'll be looking now to step up to that sort of next level upwards. I know he talked about Chris Eubank Jr. in the aftermath. I'm pretty sure Chris Eubank Jr. would probably find McKenna too high risk and too little reward, but we'll be interested to see where he goes next. Good debut performance from Liverpool Stephen Clark, obviously trained by Stephen Smith and with Paul Smith. And he was making his debut at middleweight in a 4-round affair with Mammadov. It proved to be a bit of a mismatch in the end. I think I was impressed though with Clark making his debut. I thought he settled into his range really early on. I thought he boxed nicely before, of course, stopping Mammadov in the 3rd round, a fight which ended in quite bizarre circumstances, of course, with Mammadov, the way he turned his back on Clark while he was still throwing shots. Not quite sure what that was about. Referee deciding there was no option but to call a halt to it. And, of course, Clark, I think he's going to do really good things. He looks the part, talks well, and he looks to have the skills as well to pay the bills. So keep an eye on that one. Keris Arkansas, I really like Keris Arkansas, Olympic medalist, and she went in last night with a very game Leila Furtado. That was a cracking fight, I thought, in the end. After the 1st round, Arkansas landed that lovely 1-2 right on the bell, put Furtado down, and she looked all over the place. I thought that was going to be an early end to the fight, the way that one was going. But for credit to Furtado, she really sort of put down on a gumshoe, went back out there and had a real go. And she caused Arkansas some problems in those middle rounds. A good 10-round contest for Arkansas to get those rounds under her belt as she looks to move on to her next challenge. I like her style, slick southpaw. I like the way she sort of holds that left hand sort of cop ready to throw. And she did throw last night with a lot of good effect. She was really landing that straight left last night and causing Furtado all sorts of problems. Up at super middle, Chelli became the new British and Commonwealth super middleweight champion in a rematch of a fight that those two had been involved in back in 2020. And I thought it was the right decision again. I was disappointed for Jack Cullen. He just didn't really seem to settle into that fight. Didn't really seem to have an answer for Chelli's sort of awkward style, unorthodox the way Chelli just sort of held his ground with his low guard, waiting for Cullen to make the running. But Cullen sort of sat at a range that I thought made it comfortable for Chelli, and it was surprisingly, despite Cullen's stature and reach advantage, it was Chelli that seemed to be having the better effect with the jab. It was his lead left hand that won him the fight. He does have that sort of tendency to spring in and throw those clubbing right hands, but they didn't really have much effect. But he certainly was winning the battle of the jabs last night. And Cullen tried all sorts. He didn't really seem to have a plan B that was effective, that could sort of get him onto the back foot. That's what I'd like to have seen him trying to be a bit busier with the jab of his own, but didn't seem to have the answer, and it was Chelli who had his hand raised. I'm interested to see where he goes next. I think he obviously fought Mark Jeffers and lost last year to Mark Jeffers, and it might be that now he's got those titles that Jeffers might fancy his chances at in a follow-up fight to try and get his hands on those titles, and Chelli might think he can right that wrong. Callum Simpson is another one. He was obviously in attendance, was calling out the winner of the fight, seemed to think he had the beating of him. Callum Simpson, I think he's ranked with one of the governing bodies, so potentially that could be a good matchup next. Simpson and Chelli, will see what happens there. On to the main event, guys. May looks stepping up in weight from having fought previously at light welter, and prior to that we know she unified previously at super feather. I thought Maya looked good at the weight. She looked like the bigger girl to me, maybe not the strongest of the two, but certainly size wise I don't think you'd have known between them who was the one stepping up. And it was a fantastic fight. I think we should say that first and foremost. Both of those girls from the off to the final bell really did give it all, didn't they? They were both throwing shots. They both had success at various times in a fight. I thought it was a really fascinating contest for the 10 2-minute rounds that we saw. But I will say that for me, the wrong girl had her hand raised at the end of the fight. And as much as I rate and respect Natasha Jonas, I think she's a class act. But unfortunately, I just had Maya winning the fight. Would I go so far as to call it a robbery? No, I don't think that I would. I've watched it back since I watched it live last night, and I had Maya up. I had Maya winning going into the final round. And I watched it back this morning, and actually having watched it back, I thought Jonas won more of the early rounds than perhaps I gave her credit for last night. I thought she was really effective in the first half of the fight at making Maya miss and sort of overreach, and then making her pay to the body. She landed some really lovely thudding hooks into the body, short hooks into the body with great effect. And I thought that it took Maya a few rounds to get into her rhythm and find the range. But when she did, I think for me, around the midway through, I thought that she had the better of it. I thought on a few occasions she backed Jonas up against the ropes and was landing with real success. You could see her landing to the head of Jonas. It wasn't that Jonas was sort of just tucking up and taking those shots. Maya was really landing towards the end. Her work rate was high. I thought she was pressing the fight for the majority of it. Jonas was more content to sit back on the back foot and counter. But for me, I thought Maya deserved to have her hand raised because she seemed to land more of the cleaner shots, and she certainly had the better of the second half of the fight. And I thought she won the second half of the fight clearer than Jonas won the first half of the fight. Close some of the rounds were, I understand that, but I don't see, for me, how two of the judges could justify making Jonas the winner. I was expecting a split draw, in fairness. When I heard the first card, Jonas had won by a couple of rounds, and then Maya, I think the second judge gave it to Maya by 4 rounds, which I thought, in fairness, probably seemed, a big gap for Maya. I had Maya by a couple of rounds, but I was expecting the split draw. And I think at least with the split draw, effectively you're saying Maya hasn't lost the fight. But to say that Maya lost that fight, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. And I feel a bit for Maya because she's obviously come over to the UK now and fought a couple of times and lost 2 fights by split decision that arguably she would have fancied that she'd won, particularly last night. I thought it was clearer last night than the Baumgardner fight for me personally. I think with the Baumgardner fight, I remember watching that live and I thought Baumgardner had edged it. Now, I know that they say you know it's a risk that you take when you go on away soil and you fight the champion to expect a decision win. So she would have known that the risks, you know, associated with coming over here. But I don't like some of the comments, and I was listening to some of the TalkSport commentary, and I think it's for all 3 commentators. They all had Mayer winning the fight by a couple of rounds, but then they were saying that Jonas deserved it. So I don't quite understand that. I don't understand why she deserved it if she didn't win it. You know, you deserve a fight if you win it, as far as I'm concerned, and she didn't win it. Another thing that they were saying, well, if you go to America, you might have won it. You come to Britain, and Jonas wins it. Well, again, no necessarily think that's the right way it should be. I think Mayer deserves a lot of respect for coming over here, and I think she can feel herself hard done by for mine. And I got no skin in the fight, didn't have any money, and again, the rounds are subjective. I appreciate that. I'm not saying that Jonas didn't have success, because as I say, particularly in those early rounds, I thought she was boxing well and having a lot of success, aiming at the Mayer body, which was obviously part of the tactics. She certainly started faster than she has done in her previous fights. That she's been on the wrong end of those close decisions. She was on the wrong end of a close decision against Taylor and certainly against Terry Harper, which I thought she won quite clearly. So taking nothing away from Natasha Jonas. She's a class act. She spoke well after the fight, behaviour before the fight, and she boxed well. And she was part of what was a brilliant fight that we all enjoyed. There was that sort of feeling afterwards that perhaps Mayer had been on the wrong end of one. That's my view, just my opinion. Anyway, guys, I think I said enough on that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Did you have winning? What did you make of the undercard if you tuned in? Catch me on the next video. I'll be looking ahead to this weekend over in America with a very stiff task of Jaime Munguia up at 168. I'll be looking ahead to that, and the boxing news I'll be touching in on as well. So thanks for tuning into this one, guys. JH the Boxing Fan, thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next one.